Hello, my name is Sean Bouchard, and I'm going to be playcasting the Stanley Parable tonight. I'm going to be starting it off. Uh, Calling this at Fun with Bill's suggestion play-by-play. I don't know if that name's going to stick, but I threw together some graphics for it, just mostly to play with the graphics. And see what I could do with like YouTube and Twitch and stuff. It's fun. It's kind of addictive. So Stanley Parable, we're going to start tonight. This is a game that I think some of the people in the chat have played. There was some excitement around me playing it. I have not played this game, but I played the predecessor to it, which was also called the Stanley Parable, which was developed by Davey Reedon in 2011. I actually knew Davey in 2011. He was the producer on my MFA thesis project, Greyline, which was kind of a failure as a game, but a success as a thesis project because it taught me everything that I know about developing games and project management. And Davey kind of came in late in the process to sort of rescue me from myself because I had bitten off more than I could chew. And Davey, if I remember correctly, like we weren't good friends or anything, but we had a number of interactions. He was, I think, in critical studies. He was not in the interactive department at USC, but he was the cinema school. So I hadn't gotten to know him previous to that. But he's a super smart guy. And it turns out that sort of around the same time that I was working with him, he was developing this game. As a source mod, the Stanley Parable. And it's a really cool, really clever, really interesting, thought-provoking sort of a game. So I played that demo around when it came out in 2011. In 2012, he took it and decided to make like a bigger version, got a professional artist and started a company. And in 2013, the official release of the Stanley Parable came out. I have not touched this. So I think it will have some things in common with the game that I played, but it's been several years now since I played that. And so I remember some of the iconic moments and I remember a lot of the themes, but I think a lot of the writing and the gameplay will have actually changed. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also really excited because this is going to be a very different game than the last game that I played, Papoio. Papoio was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It was a very emotional game. This is, I think, going to be a very analytical game. So Davey, I believe, is really using this as a platform to talk about games and media and interactivity. And maybe some other things as well. I'm really excited to sort of dive into that. I want to call out before I hit play. Oh yeah. I'm playing the Stanley Parable. I want to point out this like really cool title screen where you can maybe see that the image captured on the computer is the same as the full screen version of the game that we're playing, including the menu and the mouse and the computer embedded inside of it. There's a very, today I would sort of reference Inception, right? There's a very recursive theme to this that I think is going to be recurrent in the game, based on what I know about Davey and what I know about the game. So I am, but It's a great way to start. It's in my game design class, I talk a lot about packaging and presentation of the games, and we deal a lot in board games, and so the first thing that the player sees is the box, and they open that up and they look at the pieces and they look at the rules. In a video game, the first thing that you see is the title screen, and when the title screen says something about the game. The other one that I'm thinking about right now is The Last of Us. If you've ever played The Last of Us, the title screen for The Last of Us is absolutely fantastic. It's very, very simple. I mean, a title screen should be very, very simple, but it's the depiction of these like vines growing into a broken window and essentially overrunning the civilized space of the old world, which is what the game is about. It's about this sort of dangerous natural phenomenon that has invaded society and destroyed what, the fragility of order that we think that we have. It's a fantastic title screen, and it's just beautiful. This one is also fantastic. I love the audio in the background. If you can hear that, it's just like office chatter. So very mundane, and I think that's going to be a theme of this game. End is never, the end is never, the end is never. Never. There's only one way to read that, right?
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day, every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Okay, so a couple things that I want to just note up front. First of all, the device of the narrator. This is something that's going to be present sort of throughout the game, that we're going to see a lot. It's sort of the core system by which the game is expressing itself in an interesting way. And that voice, man, that is like such a perfect voice. It's just really, really good casting, I have to say, and that makes such a huge difference. The other thing that I want to note is, like I said, I played the demo version, the early version of this game, which was great and like very serviceable. There's been an obvious upgrade in the graphics, which is pretty cool to see. So I'm gonna step out of the office.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
So
No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
The narrator is responding to what I'm doing. That sort of second bark there, no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find a trace of his coworkers. That's because I actually, came into this area rather than proceeding directly straight through. The narrator is also cueing me, right? He's giving me not terribly subtle hints about what I'm supposed to do next. Stanley went to the meeting room. That's what I am supposed to do. I understand um, very clearly what the game is intending for me to do. I'm not 100% sure
When
where the
Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
I don't know where the meeting room is, but this is I'm gonna follow directions. I'm gonna go through the door on my left. It's clear though, like I probably should have stopped there. So that's one of the iconic scenes that I remember. The you are in a room. There are 2 doors. The voice tells you to go through one of the doors. Um, we've transitioned kind of subtly from I am obeying the voice because I have no real choice, right? The only direction that I could go, like the only thing that I could do in the office was leave the
Stanley just
office.
stood there doing nothing at all. He seems to think I have nothing better to do with my time than to sit around and describe every fascinating little detail of his inability to do anything. This is why Stanley and I are on such good terms.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. So there's no real choice, right? I have a sort of agency, but it's kind of an illusory agency. The only thing that I can meaningfully do from the office is leave it. The only thing I can meaningfully do when I get to the coworker space is to continue through the only door that's open. But then I come to a point where there are obviously 2 doors. And now I do have a meaningful choice. I can go through one or I can go through the other. And I've seen actually every door that I go through closes behind me. So I understand that this is not only like meaningful agency, like I now can do one of 2 things, but that this choice has repercussions. I can only go one direction. And so the direction that I go, now this feels like a choice. And now the fact that the voice is prompting me to go one direction is more meaningful. Like it has a
Yet
real
there
meaning.
was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Do not alter without consulting whiteboard manager. So, obviously another thing that this game is doing is it's poking a lot of fun at corporate culture. The whole idea of Stanley and his job is to sit in a room and await instructions that are at the level of detail of literally what button he's supposed to press, and then he presses that button. This is an a modern Dilbert sort of commentary on how ridiculous the sort of the culture of what is this cubicle farms is, and all of this is like, please no more charts, boss appreciation minute. This is all like really good solid satire stuff. What do people want? Things, money, not happiness. Somebody got fired over happiness. Things, but with money to buy more things. Graphs. Yep, this is, again, the door closes. Now here's a door that's different than all of the other doors. The other doors that I've seen have been unmarked or they've had numbers on them. The fact that this is different makes me wonder if I can interact with it. Look at that, I can.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track.
Okay.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
I'm gonna be, a good sheep, actually. This is, again, like it's presenting me with obvious potential choices. And one of them is obviously valued differently than the other because the voice is telling me one is what I'm supposed to do. Not even what I'm supposed to do. One is instructing me in the past tense that this is what I did, which is a beautifully subtle way to be beyond instructive, right? Like not only it's telling me what I'm supposed to do in such an imperious way that it assumes it has already been done. Uh, executive bathroom. Pretty sure I'm not allowed in there. Can I check this computer? Not really. This is a hell of an office.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
Can we appreciate just for a second how absurdly exaggerated this room is? I mean, look at that ceiling. Look at those windows.
Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the device was useless, since he could never possibly know that the combination was 2845.
2845. So now we reach an interesting point where the
2845.
It's explicitly telling me that I should not do this. There's no way I could possibly know what this code is. Stanley doesn't enter the code. But it's also hinting extremely strongly.
But it turns out that the panel's emergency override kicked in, and the door just opened all by itself. And Stanley got the hell along with the story. Well, whoop-de-doo.
Interesting. So, gives me an opportunity to face a different kind of decision, right? That's slightly different. There's a suggestion that no matter what I do, it is going to be interpreted as resistant. And a lot of what this game is about is your resistance to the narrative as stated. So if I entered the code, then I'm resisting the narrative because Stanley couldn't possibly know what the code was. If I don't enter the code, then clearly I'm resisting the narrative because the narrator wants me so badly to continue that in fact he's going to make it happen regardless of what I do. So it actually reveals itself as kind of a moment of false choice, like false agency, I guess.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Interesting. I very, very much appreciate the voice, and this is all intentional, but I appreciate the voice telling me what to do and setting up these interesting sort of quandaries for me. It's a different thing for the voice to tell me how I feel.
Ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Fascinating. Look at this. So, I mean, Dave is very, very deliberate in how he's setting all of this up, right? And it feels, Jesus, I'm just going to reference Portal continuously. That's all I'm ever going to do. But this feels very Portal-like, right? There's sort of the neo-industrial atmosphere to it, and then there's this sort of intrusion of something handmade. That is, it's a message from who, it's unclear, but it's clearly sort of out of place, and it's offering me more information. It's offering me, in the spirit of the Stanley Parable, a choice. And how real that choice is a great question. I'm intrigued by the story that we're telling, so I'm gonna go along with the narrator into this mind control room. This is a button, I think.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
What terrible secret. Again, like the deadpan of this narration.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Okay, interesting interpretation. It's very clearly giving me a path forward. Won't let me go back. It's interesting that like all of that dramatic reveal was dramatic reveal for Stanley's sake, right? We are all already aware of this. We've gotten the sense of the atmosphere of the building. We've gotten this sort of like panopticon, like, you know, hyper monitored sort of thing, and there are cameras everywhere. We've like, this room does not come as a surprise to me. So it's interesting that it comes as a surprise to Stanley, and that's something that the game specifically wants to point out. Because one of the things that it's doing is it's removing my emotional resonance with Stanley. Like, Stanley is not me, is clearly not me.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
A couple of these guys are fired. That's really interesting.
No, he refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable, wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world?
So in film, there's an expression, show don't tell. In writing too, I think, and just like, you know, novel writing. Show don't tell is basically prescribing against exactly what's going on here. This is, we're being walked through a very dramatic narrative about Stanley's.
Here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
So, I mean, we're going through this like complete melodramatic narrative arc, right? Stanley's discovery, his reaction to it, the intense roiling emotion that he feels, his, you know, decision to sort of stand in the face of everything that he believes and do something brave and meaningful. And we are being told all of this. We're not being shown any of it in a movie sense, which makes for extremely dissatisfying like narrative experience. And then from a game perspective, we're not enacting any of it. The sort of game equivalent of show don't tell is that the player should enact rather than just be shown. And we're not doing any of that. We're not touching those levels of engagement. We're only being told what's happening in Stanley's head. Mind control status offline. that sounds right. I want everything offline. I think I want to go to the power, the facility power here. Oh, there's a big red button. I could just press the big red button. I think I want to go into the facility power and maybe turn it off or possibly use it for my own nefarious purposes. I'm trying to actually read the
When at last
operating
he found
system
the source
stuff.
of the room's power, he knew it was his duty, his obligation, to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
All right, let's do it. This is the narrative that you want me to enact, to sort of walk through. I can do that. I think I can do that. It's awfully dark. Now,
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
look how pretty this is. Look at what a reward this is.
Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Cool. We achieved happiness. That sounds pretty good. So, interesting. So, rather than, the design just did a couple of interesting things right there. It showed me that I beat the game. Not only was this sort of narratively a conclusion point, like that was clearly the epilogue speech, but I got an achievement. I got an achievement that literally said beat the game, right? So I know I'm done. I'm done with the game. I finished it. But it does not take me back to the title screen, to the main menu. Because if I go back to the title screen, I have the option to quit right there. Like that is actually the function of the title screen. Is it's sort of like it's the airlock between playing the game and not playing the game. This is a game that is not meant to be played once. By virtue of sort of how dissatisfying that playthrough was, I think we know this, we can tell, and by the sort of obvious choices that we were given that we couldn't take. So this game wants us to play again, and in order to encourage us to play again, it's going to actually not take us, as is traditional, to the airlock. It's going to take us to the sort of moment right after we step through the airlock. We can
stood for a long time in one spot. It's part of a game. He likes to see how long he can go without dying. So far, he's doing excellent. And if he just stays right where he is, I'm sure he'll keep up that good momentum. Let's observe the genius at work.
I hope that you guys appreciate sort of the Davies writing as much as I do. I really enjoy this sort of dry wit. which is in a pretty extreme contrast to the very like emotionally manipulative melodrama of Papayo, which is not meant to be denigrating that game at all. I think that it does what it does very well, but it's working on an emotional level. This is working on a much more cynical level and analytical level. So we're taken here to where we can start the game again. I'm going to take like a 2-minute break, and then we are going to do just that, and we're going to see what happens to Stanley if he's not such a good boy. So stick around. I'll be back in a minute. Oh, interesting. Interesting.